There we go. The past couple weeks have been our newspapers, our television screens, our radio broadcasts have been filled with reminders that our world has some hard and difficult things in it. I don't know if you've seen those pictures of children and men and women who suffocated with the foaming coming out of their mouth and nose there in Syria, an attack by their own government, using nerve gas and chlorine, just a sign of how awful we can be to each other. And in the middle of, and also a reminder that we still live in a world where military is necessary and violence can be used both to protect but also then as a way to push down. And just this week we had the military, our own strikes, and a reminder of our remarkable armed services as an attempt to tell the Syrian regime, thou shalt not treat your people that way. There are lines that must be crossed. And in these weeks that are filled with such difficult and such hard things for us to see, as we're still in the Easter season and the echoes of the trumpets and the smell of the lilies and the rumbles of our new organ are still sort of echoing in our mind, I've been wondering, given all the things that are going on around us and how difficult those are, if Easter, that we are still remembering and celebrating, if it's sometimes hard to see where Easter lands in the things that are going on around us. And in particular, wondering if Easter is one of these things that's so big and important. And did you hear the capital B and the capital I there? So big and important that it's like we reserve it and we don't quite see where it lands down in the things that are going on here in our world today. And I've been wondering about that. Easter is that big and important, and it is that promise that all of us will need and want to hold on to at some point. And in these weeks after Easter, as we explore and as we have this glimpse of what Easter means and what happened, it's a reminder of the things we confess, the things that we've bet our lives on. And today, that big and important thing, that promise that all of us are going to need at some point, is what we confess in just a moment in our creed. I bet my life in the resurrection of the body. It is Jesus on Easter Sunday evening, as I was saying with the kids. And Jesus who appears with his disciples, and in their joy as they are disbelieving and wondering, he says, do you have anything to eat? And to show them that it is him, he says, here's my hands. See my feet. It's not a ghost. It's not a spirit thing. It's not angels and a halo and wings. No, it's body. It's the stuff that God created and said it is good. And it's a reminder that that's us too, that that's God's plan for us. That there will come a time and there will come a day when God will keep that promise, that we will be raised as our own stuff, right? As ourselves, as a body. And I don't know the details of it. I don't know how that's going to work, but God does, and I'm okay with that. And that big and important promise, that thing that we most need to hold on to, there will come a time for all of us when that is the promise that we most need. And it reminds me always about a woman named Phyllis that I knew, who in her mid to late 80s was dying of cancer. And I was her pastor. And as she was journeying toward death and getting closer, as death had come closer, she had one question that she asked me as her pastor. One question that she so much wanted to know the answer to. She said, Pastor, do you think I'll get to hold Johnny? Johnny was her baby, who 65 years before had been stillborn. And in that day, in that era, it was thought that if the mother got the chance to hold her baby that had been born, stillborn, that would be harder on her. She said, I never got to hold him. Do you think when I get to heaven, will I get to hold him? 65 years later, that's the one thing she wanted to know. Is this body resurrection thing, is that real? Pastor, do you think I'll get to hold Johnny? And I got to say to her, absolutely. I don't know how it works. God does. But that sounds exactly like the God that I know. Absolutely. You'll get to hold Johnny. The resurrection of the body. That God doesn't separate us out from our stuff, from these bodies that he's given us, the stuff of life, but instead has created us and called it good. And that his promise to us is not that we'll be whisked away. No, his promise is that we'll be brought and made complete as we are. That there will come that day when we will be raised and it'll be our stuff, just complete, fulfilled, and right. I don't know how it's going to work, but God does, and I'm okay with that. How about you? And so Easter is that big, important promise. It is that moment, and in these weeks we get to hear again what it is that we confess. I believe in the resurrection of the body, but it is big. It is important with the capital B and the capital I, and yet we're in the middle of a world that looks like, well, the way it's looked for the past couple weeks. And in a world that looks like this, we also have to ask ourselves, and we also wonder in these hours and days after Easter, okay, Jesus is alive, we know that, and Jesus is loose in the world, we know that. That's what Easter means. And how is it that we can see him when the world looks like this? And today, on this story that comes from Easter evening, Jesus answers that by offering us his hands and his feet. Hands and feet. I'm going to take a look at your hands. Go ahead. Take a look at your hands, right? Think about what these mean for us. Take a look at your hands. We have a phrase that we use about our hands, right? I knew it like it was the back of my hand. Take a look at the back of your hand, right? These are you. This is uniquely you, right? Look at the things that makes that uniquely you, right? The way the tendons sort of stretch there, and you can see the lifeblood that courses underneath there. You might have some spots and some freckles. Look at the creases in your palm, the way the knuckles bend and flex under the skin, and what that does to the skin there, right? These are the places that, these are you. And nobody else has hands that look quite like that. But notice, too, what the world has done to your hands, right? I have this strange little double wound here that I don't even know when I got that thing. That's there, and then there's this scar over here that's been there as long as I remember. And another one over here that appeared the other day, and I don't know what that's from either. And you've got them too, right? Look at the calluses. This is where we encounter the world, and the world gets kind of abrasive on us, right? It's both us, and it's where we push away the world, or we gather it to us. We can caress, and we can strike, and we can gather, and we can hug. This is what the hands are for us. They are uniquely us, but it's also where we rub against the world. And it's where the world leaves a mark, too. I'd invite you to take a look at your feet, but people get squirrely when I say such things. Right? So just think about your feet here for a second too, and think about what our feet do for us and the toll it takes on our feet, right? Think about the calluses that form there, the constant impact and encounter with the world. And at the end of the day, when it's been a long day, what is it that aches more than anything else? Your feet. It's where the bunions form. And we keep them tucked away because it's also where we sort of sweat and where the dust accumulates. But then think about a little child's feet. If you've ever seen those little toes, they can be precious too, right? And our feet are where we encounter step after step, moment after moment, every day. That's where we encounter the earth, the world, right? And that's why when we're on holy ground, we need to get the sandals and the feet off. Get that cleared out of the way. Our feet are where we gather the dust of life. We get abraded and we get bruised, and yeah, we stub our toes. Our hands and our feet are both us, sort of uniquely and intimately us. And they're also where the world abrades, where we sort of rub up against the world and we encounter it. And so when Jesus wants to let us know how to recognize him in the world, he offers us feet. He says, look, it's really me. See what the world did to me right there. And look at my feet. Look at the footprints that I leave. See that it's really me. Look what happened. And if you have any fish, I got teeth. So how do we know Jesus in the world? He offers hands and feet. It's going to look like wherever the world encounters us. Where the world abrades against us and against our lives. Where it leaves that mark, that's where Jesus is going to be. And it's where his beloved children are being hurt. And the little wound that you didn't even know where it came from. And also the really terrible ones that we see on TV. That it will be Jesus' feet that are going there. And Jesus always there, right where we encounter the world. And it does its worst. Because that's his promise. That's where he'll be for us. And Jesus says in the world, if we want to know who he is and how to spot him, sometimes those hands are going to look like ours. Take a look at your hands. And it's going to be our feet that are going to the ones that he loves. To offer a cup of cold water, a piece of broiled fish, a word of hope, a big and important promise. How do we know Jesus in the world? He'll be wherever we need him most. Because he's risen. He's alive. He's out there. He's been turned loose. And he's going ahead of us. That's who Jesus is. And that's what Easter means. Hallelujah. Christ is risen.